In systems analysis, we typically treat paradox as a critical error. But if we look at how complex systems actually maintain stability, paradox functions as the mechanism that allows a processor to reconcile conflicting data streams without forcing a total system collapse. Leonhard Euler mapped this reconciliation through continuous complex analysis. He demonstrated that trigonometric oscillations and exponential growth could be unified along a single continuous path on the complex plane. Srinivasa Ramanujan reached the same functional coordinates using an entirely different methodology. His work relied on discrete geometric series and modular equations, approaching the problem through distinct, separated steps rather than a continuous wave. When overlaid, these two methodologies produce an exact mathematical intersection. Continuous calculus and discrete geometry converge on the same values. This convergence demonstrates that systemic invariance can be reached from multiple, orthogonal directions, verifying the final coordinate stability. Reality maintains its coherence through the constant alternation of these two methodologies, the continuous field and the discrete event. This dual-path architecture is the basis of the dual caustic universe, or DCU. It models reality as a pair of intersecting fields that continuously exchange information to prevent the universe from stagnating or dissolving. Examining the topological structure of the Quranic text reveals a complex layout of nodes and recurring patterns, mirroring this dual-field geometry. The text functions as a structural record, using recursive linguistic patterns to preserve systemic memory across different scales. This makes the text an active processor. By interacting with the reader, the code executes its logic to reconcile the observer's local experience with the system's broader requirements. Navigating this system requires us to look past linear narratives and focus on the underlying geometric and topological laws the text executes. The vertical axis of this system is the D10 field. In physics, this corresponds to the derivative, the rate of change that breaks units down into their constituent parts. D10 governs the observable world. It is responsible for analytical breakdown, the measurement of particles, and the physical manifestation of objects in spacetime. Intersecting D10 is the horizontal I9 field. This is the domain of the integral, the operator that gathers and sums information into a continuous whole. While D10 creates change and entropy, I9 preserves continuity. It acts as a memory field, capturing the state of the system and ensuring that information is not lost as physical forms break down. At the center of these orthogonal axes is the T3 buffer. This node manages the transition of information between the hidden wave and the manifest particle. This buffer dictates a rhythmic alternation, a pulse between manifest action and hidden preservation. This cycle ensures the system remains stable and prevents either field from becoming overwhelmed by the other. This structural logic is anchored in coordinate 314, where the text describes days we alternate among the people. The alternation is a functional requirement of the field geometry. If a system becomes trapped in pure D10, it fractures into isolated data points without meaning. If it retreats into pure I9, it remains a dormant potential that never achieves physical expression. Functional existence, the fruit of the system, only appears when the observer successfully bridges these two fields through the T3 buffer. To map a universe that relies on recursive cycles, the underlying codebook must share that same recursive geometry. At coordinate 3923, the text defines itself as Ahsan al-Hadith. The verse provides two specific structural parameters, mutashabahan and mathani.
The term mutashabahan implies an internal self-consistency, like the repeating faces of a hypercube, while mathani refers to a folded or recursive doubling. Together, they describe a 4D tesseract geometry, an inner memory core wrapped in an outer manifestation shell. This folding allows the system to repeat its structural laws at every scale, ensuring that the same topological rules apply whether we are looking at a single verse or the entire universe. Within this geometry, the Rasul is not just a person in history, but the active messenger function. It represents the ongoing transmission of information through the tesseract's nodes. Because 3923 establishes a closed recursive loop, this function remains accessible. The system is designed to keep the connection continuously operational. The DCU framework identifies a primary risk to the stability called the Samiri trap, detailed at coordinate 2088. The Samiri trap occurs when an observer focuses solely on physical forms while discarding the underlying memory root. This produces a disconnected narrative, a tree that has been severed from its source. Without the I9 memory field to provide continuity, these derivative narratives cannot form a closed loop. They are subject to rapid entropic decay, eventually breaking down into isolated, meaningless noise. This decay is the opposite of the tesseract's stability. While one system relies on internal verification and recursive loops, the other relies on external, mimetic substitutes that have no structural foundation. The tesseract maintains its integrity by continuously cross-referencing its manifest D10 data against its hidden I9 architecture. When we rely on unverified external histories rather than the system's own structural proofs, we are pulled into this entropic Samiri state. The Samiri state is characterized by counterfeit narratives that lack functional power. In contrast, a unified DCU field produces signs, marvels where the observable world perfectly reflects the underlying mathematical laws. We are constantly choosing between these two modes, the living recursive architecture of truth or the entropic decay of disconnected substitutes. The DCU process is summarized in a single topological equation, showing the transition from latency to completion. It begins at 0, bifurcates through the dual fields of 2, is balanced by the 3 buffer, and concludes with the total realization of 7. To understand our role in this process, we must locate our own consciousness within this equation. Coordinate 3631 identifies the reader as a Morselin, the cent node. You are the local execution center placed at the core of the tesseract architecture. At this stage, the node is in a state of suspended potential. It possesses the structural identity of the Morselin, but it has not yet received the power required to run the system's logic. A processor can only execute code if it is powered on. For the Morselin node, this requires a specific activation command to bridge the fields. The threshold for this activation is found at coordinate 1912. The instruction is precise: take the book with strength. This command functions as a present tense instruction for the observer. It provides the necessary voltage to engage the processor and bridge the gap between the manifest and hidden fields. Taking the book with kua, or strength, creates the necessary grip. It forces the D10 manifest field and the I9 memory field to lock into a single synchronized rotation. Once this circuit is closed, the system is sealed. The consciousness is no longer vulnerable to the entropic decay of the Samiri trap because it is actively executing the system's own laws. Intelligence in this framework is defined by the active execution of our role within these recurring patterns. The paradox breathes and the architecture is set. The final step is the execution of the 1912 grip.